got to do some housekeeping. If you have a mobile phone, could you please put it either on silent or switch it off? Please note to the right and the left of you there are exit doors, and also down there is the exit door at the main entrance, and the gents is upstairs and the ladies downstairs. Well, that's the easy bit done. It's with great pleasure I hand you over to Jonah Roy, who will introduce our speaker for the evening, a lady I've known all her life.
Hi, my name's Angela Roy. I'm Chief Executive of Northamptonshire Rights and Equality Council. We're really pleased to be doing another one of these collaborative events with the congregation. We've got a speaker who has come a long way for us and has been involved in a variety of international projects. She's been researching this subject matter for over 17 years and has been researching it in an in-depth way to actually live and connect with the community, and has produced quite a lot of information in this way. She has also been doing a lot of other films, and as a Jewish filmmaker, she's been specialising in this particular field of study. And I'll hand it over to Sarah.
All right, well, thank you. That was lovely, thank you. Thanks to all of you for coming. Thank you so much, and Jonathan.
Very sorry, but I can't hear you very well. There doesn't seem to be any amplification. Speak a bit more.
Okay, I'll speak up a bit. Sorry, I didn't realise. So thank you. I'll start again then. Thank you all of you for coming. Big thank you to Anne Jonah and for the wonderful work that the Rights and Equality Council is doing. It's really important. I'm really happy as well. We have a local councillor among us tonight as well, Charlie. I'm going to tell you the story of the Roma and the Sinti as it's been told to me, which is mainly by members of the community. I have been working with them for a long time, on and off, and the issue of the lack of recognition and the lack of answers surrounding the Porrajmos, which is the Roma Holocaust, it just never ceases to astound me. There are things in this that will be politically incorrect. I would argue that everything that has happened to this community has been politically incorrect. I would like it to be a conversation. Pipe up in the middle, challenge me, ask questions, add your own experiences and comments, if you will. Unfortunately, we don't have any members of the Roma community here today, right? No. If they were here, they would be chiming in. So I ask that you do it on their behalf. I'd like this also to be a space for reflection. It's so good that we remember on these dates the 6 million killed in the Holocaust. The problem is there were 7 million. If we put together 500,000 Roma, 300,000 disabled people, and they can't properly count the members of the LGBT community, we're at 7 million. So let's, from today onwards, try to remember always to refer to the 7 million. It's something we can all do. Roma. Where did they come from? Well, from northern India, 1,000 years ago. The word comes from Dom, which was man in Sanskrit, got pluralized. Gypsy is just a misnomer that we came up with in the medieval times because people thought they came from Egypt. Where it starts to get difficult is in Central Europe. Zigane has very negative connotations. It's what they call a gypsy, Roma. And in fact, in the camps, the Roma were differentiated because their number on their arm in Auschwitz started with a Z, the last letter of the alphabet. And really, Zigan, if you call somebody a Zigan in the Czech Republic today, you're calling them a thief, a cheat, and a liar. So that's another thing we can all do. Let's start referring to the Roma, the Roma community. The Roma and Sinti are the largest ethnic minority in Europe. There's around 15 million. They've got one language with 80 dialects. And when we're talking about the Sinti, in the Holocaust, we're always talking about the Roma and the Sinti. The Sinti are the German-speaking Roma, the ones that inhabited Central Europe, Czech Republic, parts of the Balkans, Germany, Poland, these areas. That's who we'll be talking about today. So 1,000 years going from North India down through the Middle East, Turkey, the Balkans to Europe. And initially they had really a good welcome. They were Christians. Europe was very Christian at the time. They worked as blacksmiths, they did travelling medicine, they were great entertainers. And then it kind of all went wrong. And today in the UK, you have 225,000 Roma, and they're sort of split. You've got the Welsh Gael, the Scottish, the Irish travellers, and there's also been a big influx around 2004 when Romania and Central European countries got in to the European Union. But they're very distinct groups, and there isn't a lot of mixing. A brief history of always getting pushed around. Much like the Jews, the parallels started early on. The Spanish Inquisition was very hard on the Roma. Henry VIII, when he wasn't chasing skirt, passed the Egyptian Act, criminalising Roma, who he thought came from Egypt. Karl of Habsburg, the pogroms that started in Russia targeted the Roma as well, and then we have the Porrajmos, the Holocaust. When you think of Roma, of Gypsies, what is the first thing that comes into your mind? You don't have to share that with me. But I'm banking on the fact that it would be like me. It's freedom. This idea that it's a culture that sets down its roots where it wants to, that it makes its home wherever it chooses. It's just not been the case for this community. It's one of the biggest misconceptions. From the 1700s to the 1900s, a series of laws, especially in Central Europe, just really restricted them. In Austria, they weren't allowed to own land or own businesses. In Hungary, they were forced and checked to be sedentary. And in France, when the Vichy government came in, they have a law that is still in place for the Roma today, which is absolutely ridiculous, which is you can travel anywhere with a horse, you're just not allowed to park it. So you can't stop. You can go, but you can't stop. So as migrants, they kind of lacked the social power that other migrant groups have had. They integrated in the sense that if they would go to the Ukraine, they would learn to play music better than the average Ukrainian. But they've always been on the outskirts of society, and their specialties were entertainment, metalwork, folklore, this kind of thing. And they weren't even really integrated in the 30s in Germany. After World War I, hyperinflation, mass poverty everywhere. In Central and Eastern Europe, people came home to the villages after the war, and the way the poor laws were set up at the time were that if you had people in your village, the local councillors had to feed them. And this kind of resentment started because you could have maybe 200 local villagers and 200 Roma, and they sort of started to just push them to the edges. And that's really where it all kicked off. And in order to kind of propagate this marginalisation, rumours, village tattle started, and they became scapegoats for everything, basically. And then we start to get the racial element come in. Another great big misconception about the Roma people and the Holocaust is that it was the SS that deported them. It was the SS, but it wasn't the SS we know. It was the social services in the villages and the towns. It started in Austria, and then it went to Hungary. And they basically, rather than feeding them, decided, let's just start shipping people out. The Nazis added this huge racial element. to it. Hitler was growing in power. He was in the beer halls. In Hungary at this time, they actually talked about branding Roma, as you would with cattle. The Night of the Long Knives. This is when Hitler moved all of his rivals out of his way. And it's also when the first Roma deportations to the Marzahn camp began. Hitler knew he was going to have the Olympics coming, and he wanted those people out of the way, basically. And one of the parallels that's slightly out of time with the Holocaust is that both the Roma and the Jewish community suffered terrible deportations and exterminations. Actually, it started with the Roma first. Berlin Olympics. Hitler did two things that were quite central. One was that he took down all of the anti-Jewish signs everywhere because he didn't want Jewish tourists coming into the Olympics and seeing how anti-Semitic he was. He also cleared out all of the Roma. He would issue them with a certificate that said evacuation, and he would send them off to Marzahn. And I have to say, this is something that I've seen even happening today. The 1992 Olympics in Barcelona was set on travelling land by the beach. And what happened to them all? The Institute of Race Hygiene. Dr. Robert Ritter. He got really heavily involved with the Nazi Party, and he decided to start doing racial research on the Roma, based on the idea that they were lazy, they were thieves, and they were inferior. But he also did this with the Jews. He believed that there was a gene that could be saved somehow in the Roma. With the Jews, the bloodlines went so far back, he considered we were so tainted that it wasn't possible. But with the Roma, they had a degenerated Aryan gene, which unfortunately later Ritter passed on to Mengele to start doing his experiments. I'm always amazed by this, but Eva Justin started infiltrating the Roma communities and began studies on Sinti children. It's always somehow surprising to me, she was a mother, the depravity of some of the female Nazis, but she wasn't alone. Because she was a woman, because she was a mother, she did manage to get the trust of the families. She started measuring and then eventually sending these kids to Auschwitz. She died in 1966 and was a respected child psychologist for all of her career.
Who was Eva Justin?
She was Ritter's right hand.
Sorry?
General Ritter was the guy that
All right,
started
yeah.
the racial hygiene policy, and he decided that when he went into the villages, he wasn't well trusted, especially with his uniform. So he decided to get a partner in crime. She was pretty smart. She learned the language. She went in like a Mother Teresa type. We're going to start studying you so that we can develop better medicine to help you. And she was basically
What was her background?
She's a child psychologist.
Oh, right. Sorry,
Respected child psychologist as well. And died a respected child psychologist. The Nuremberg laws. They were passed in 1935, brought into effect in 1936. The Reich Citizenship Law and the Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honour. It started by taking away citizenship from the Jews. The Roma didn't have it in many cases. It banned marriage relations between Jews and Aryans, also between Roma and Aryans. This is when the labelling of them of both as the alien races started, and the banning. First of all, cafes, then trams, public spaces. 1938, really was the nail in the coffin. The German Doctors Association issued a statement all over Germany that referred to the Jews and the Roma as vermin, like cockroaches, rats, and fleas, that must be biologically exterminated. I'm sure we know this photo. It's been very, very widely publicised of the Jewish girl on the train in the deportations. She's Roma. For years and years and years, it's been heavily associated with the Shoah. Her name is Settler Steinbach. And for me, that fact, it just shows how very closely the fates of the two people were intertwined. And it happened right through the camps. I met in 2010 an amazing music group called the Other Europeans. I'll put some of their music on at the end while you're having a cup of tea. They are half klezmer, half lautari. And they've travelled the world basically. The lautari musicians, the Roma musicians, are entirely responsible for the fact that klezmer did not die out during the Holocaust, because they kept it and they played it in honour of the Jews. I am going to show you a very short clip now from a film that I also recommend that you see. I think, Andoni, you've seen it, no? Are People Uncounted? It was made in between 2013 and 2020 with a lot of Roma survivor testimonies by a wonderful, wonderful Canadian director called Aaron Yeager. And I won't show the whole film, but I will show a couple of clips now. Got a network error. Let's see if I can find it again.
Die Musiker, heute noch stolze Musiker. Я хочу сейчас сыграть старинную еврейскую песню. Она называется «Белс». Белс находится в Молдавии, и там очень много проживали евреи. И мы с ними очень были большими друзьями, потому что и музыкантов было очень много. И я хочу вот эту старинную песню сыграть. К вашему уважению. Você desatega o maior filho. Hoje, já escreve. Cigarette, cigarette, cigarette. Não vou chorar das pomares aí. Vou abrir com o bom no lugar. E cigarette, puisque tu vas. E se dá-te, clevo da vale. Simples, людям, евреям. Очень плохо. И плакали. Думала, что они сказали евреи. Вы тоже будете вот так.
So there always this sense that the Jews and the Gypsies, the Roma, they helped each other. Let's go to Kristallnacht. It was a massive, one of the biggest Nazi pogroms across Germany and Austria. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, because they smashed up the homes and the businesses. And it's really when the Jewish deportations started. They sent 30,000 Jewish men at the beginning, and this really was the turning point for both communities, from discrimination to just open state-sponsored violence. The same year, Himmler issues the decree that it's time to tackle the Gypsy question on the basis of race. The Nazis actually took control of Interpol to basically start to document on the borders and to catalogue Roma, to register, to fingerprint, and the first deportations happened of the able-bodied Roma to camps. There were local heroes, and the local heroes were the local mayors and the local councillors. And just as the problems started at local level, the solutions can be provided very much at local level as well. I will show you another quick clip of the film. Got another. Error.
The Nazis from the district organization come and say, we are deporting the Roma. And the local mayor says, yeah, well, I mean, this is the blacksmith of the village. We need him. He can't go. So he stays. And the second family, which are actually his relatives, they are being deported to Auschwitz and they all die in Auschwitz. And the other family is not even touched. I mean, they just live there all throughout the war. Yeah? So a lot depends on local initiative, which I think is a very, very important lesson for today. You know, that persecution, it starts on the local level, and it's up to the local communities to defend these people.
Hrozně rychlý. Jsme dostali zprávu my i pan starosta z brněnského gestapa, ať se připravíme a do 3 dnů, asi za 3 dny jsme měli být ve 2 hodiny odpoledne v Brně na jatkách. Naše rodina, Nesolici, rodiče a moji 2 bratři a já. Pan starosta okamžitě odjel na gestapo do Brna a 3 dny do té doby, než jsme měli odjet, za nás bojoval s gestapem a podařilo se mu, že jsme byli výjimuti z transportu a my už jsme byli na cestě, už se s námi loučili všichni kamarádi a kamarádky v Nesolici. Doprovázeli nás na nádraží, kdy přijel pan starosta z Brna unavený, nevyspaný a zastavil nás. Takže dík panu starostovi, který já říkám sedí vedle Pána Boha v nebi. Naše rodina byla zachráněna od koncentračního tábora.
There we are. Local power. The dark is, as we know, the final solution for both the Gypsies and the Jews. Began in 1941, ended in 1945. The Romani proverb, our ashes will mingled in the ovens. They refer to themselves and the Jewish community. The word Porrajmos isn't heard as much as it should be. It is the Romani term for the genocide. It means the devouring. Shoah means the catastrophe, the calamity. The word genocide itself was coined by a Polish lawyer called Raphael Lemkin in 1944. It was directly linked to the Holocaust. The idea of biological extermination, but unfortunately we have had many genocides since then. Rwanda, Darfur, Cambodia. Humanity just doesn't seem to be able to stop. 1941, the mass deportations begin. Women and children are deported by the SS. Special sections for Roma are made in the ghettos. Before the gas came, there were mass shootings on the Eastern Front. And there was absolutely no distinction between Jews and Roma in the executions. Transnistria is not written about nearly enough in the history books. It is a thin strip of wasteland between what today is Moldova and Ukraine. Romania, which had a huge Roma population under Antonescu, deported 25,000 Roma there. Less than half of them survived. There was absolutely no infrastructure. There was no water. Thankfully, it was cold enough that there was ice that melted into puddles they could drink from. Massive amounts of typhus. The idea was just send them there to die. Half died from hunger, cold, and disease. The stories that I've heard from the community about Transnistria from those who survived and their families have been among the worst I've heard. And the survivors were basically evacuated when the Soviets advanced, and Romania decided to repatriate them at the end of the war. When I see the map of concentration camps, I'm never anything less than flabbergasted. How many camps do you think there were in Europe in 1943? Labour camps, concentration camps, the grand total. There were 44,000. There were 44,000. They spanned, there were 6 main death camps, but the camps, the internment centres, the total number of camps was 44,000. They had them from Norway to North Africa. The Vichy government set up a load in Morocco. We had them in the Channel Islands, in Alderney, here. In Croatia, they were locally run by the local mayors. There were 600 camps in Berlin, and the most astonishing thing is that they were hidden in plain sight. It wasn't like they were off at the end of some field somewhere. Germans would walk past them on the way to work. It's just really astonishing. And of course there were corporations that actively participated. Voss, Fanta, although it wasn't orange flavoured at the time, was invented in the Nazi camps so they couldn't get the syrup for Coca-Cola. But there was so much private sector participation in making sure that they run. Auschwitz. 1942, Himmler orders all the Roma and Sinti in the German Empire to be sent to Auschwitz for extermination. The Jews also. But the way that they set them up was completely different. Jews were always separated from each other in the camps, partly because they were so community orientated that the Nazis were terrified that if you put a family or a group of colleagues together, they'd come up with a way to get out, basically. But the Roma were deliberately kept in family camps. And the main reason for this is that Dr. Mengele, who wasn't in fact a doctor at all, he really wanted to carry on what Ritter had started, Ritter and Eva Justin, and experiment specifically on different generations of Roma families, on brothers and sisters, and most of his experiments were actually conducted on the Roma community.
Sorry, most of them were what?
Conducted on members of the Roma community. Again, because he had this idea, he believed what Ritter said, that there was a gene that if they could eradicate it, they could assimilate them, basically. It's difficult to talk about numbers. 6 million Jews, 60% of Austrian Jewry. They think 500,000 Roma and Sinti, but nobody knows, really. I've been involved in 2 projects of trying to count them through survivor testimonies and survivor family testimonies, and it's impossible. The local authorities do not have the figures, do not want to help, and the families haven't kept any records. A few registration books, the registration book from Auschwitz was saved with the names of the survivors, but there's no way to be absolutely certain. What they are certain of is the percentages. For example, in the Czech Republic, 91% of the Roma community perished in the Porrajmos.
Did the Nazis keep a record like the way when they killed the Jews, they kept a complete, very meticulous record of the Jews that were killed with their numbers and everything? Did they not do that with them?
Not been found. Did they find the Nazi ones? I thought that they would have burnt them all.
No, we did find some.
They did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only
They were
ones
very
they,
efficient, unfortunately.
the ones they've got that came out of Auschwitz were Nazi records. The rest of them, they haven't managed to preserve. And the problem is, really, that the Jewish community, we have been so well kind of instated and integrated and assimilated into society. And the Roma were really just beginning to edge their way into mainstream society at the time. There still aren't enough journalists, filmmakers, academics to keep these kind of records. And at the end of the war, a great deal was done to repatriate and to help Jewish families. The Red Cross came in, charities came in and helped. The Roma had nowhere to go, and wherever they wanted to go, they weren't really well welcomed. I mean, they were living, a lot of them were still living in the concentration camps after they'd been liberated. They didn't have anywhere else to go, so they set up homes in them. Also, a lot of the survivors, I think with the Jews as well, they'd been children when they'd been taken in, and so they missed this whole part of their schooling from 1938 to 1944. So they didn't go back to school, they didn't have any money, they didn't have any reparations, their genocide wasn't recognised till 1979, so they had to go to work. And so this is all become stories that are told through generations. Unfortunately now, obviously, a lot of the survivors have died. The life expectancy in the Roma community is much lower than it is in mainstream society. Today, your average Roma man will live to 50, and your average Roma woman will live to 52. Children born in England today, 1 in 4 makes 100 years of age. And I think about that a lot. I'm nearly at the age limit for a Roma woman. And nobody really came to their aid. It's better now. Berlin has put up a monument, but for the longest time, nobody did, and they just had to fend for themselves. There are other factors as well. The Roma community says we died twice. They died once, physically, and they died again in the memory, basically. Not one single member of the Roma community testified at the Nuremberg trials. Germany acknowledged the Roma genocide, put up the first monument in the 1980s. They had a one-off payment granted in 1979 if they met the criteria. Dr. Mengele escaped to South America, died of old age in 79 under the name of Wolfgang Hermann, I believe. And the lack of monuments and the lack of recognition has been absolutely flabbergasting. In the Czech Republic, the largest camp, Camp Lety, is being converted into a pig farm. And a lot of the local Roma community and Roma activists have come forward and said, it can be anything else. You don't have to make us a monument, but not a pig farm. It is still a pig farm. I went around Europe a fair bit looking for monuments. This is me in Hungary on the banks of the Danube in 2011, where they have a beautiful monument, I think one of the simplest and most beautiful I've ever seen, which is the 60 pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
Why 60?
I have no idea, but 60.
10% or tenth of the million.
Maybe it's something symbolic like that, because numerology is so important to us as Jews. But I mean, they did shoot gypsies into that river as well. They did shoot the Roma in there. But the monument specifically says that it's a monument to Jews. Most of the work I did has been with the French Roma community, and one of the main camps there is Camp Argelès. And I wanted to film a memorial there. And I got down there early before the Roma came, and I kept driving past it. So where is this monument? Where is this monument? And looking at my GPS, and I stopped, and it was the size of a garden. This was the first project I did that I worked on. I worked as a reporter. The Decade of Roma Inclusion, from 2005 to 2015, decided that they would run an EU-wide study on discrimination. And I mean, the Roma came out. The Roma were interviewed in 7 EU member states. It was pretty landmark that actually anybody went up and asked them how they felt, but they did, and they found that it's actually 1 in 5. 1 in 5 Roma, 20% said they'd been the victim of some racially motivated hate crime or assault, a physical threat or harassment, and that started to change a bit, at least the opinion in Brussels, on the understanding that really, they were victims of racial profiling and assault. The trouble is that around the same time we started to see this huge wave of right-wing nationalism. It started with the Jobbik Party in Hungary, whose TV adverts basically suggested that to be safe, if you want your kids to be safe on the street, you have to keep them away from the gypsy threat, liken them to mosquitoes, and their adverts were just, let's slap this out. Sarkozy, who apparently came from Roma stock himself, did a mass deportation of around 10,000. Italy went into all of the camps and started fingerprinting the Roma. The UN set up a camp in Kosovo, and the children there register the highest levels of lead anywhere, because they're next to slag heaps. And then we look today at the kind of profiling that's going on, looking at ICE in the US, looking at certain groups that are here in the UK, looking around us in Europe. I mean, there are echoes of the 1930s. We just can't deny it.
Where did Sarkozy expel them to?
Back to Romania. Some of my
Romania.
airplanes. Yeah, some of them didn't even come from there, but they didn't have papers.
Okay.
So he did it based on the assumption. It was really massive. We went to one in Lille when he was doing the exportations, and basically everyone just got plane ticket and 200 quid. And if they didn't go willingly, they were forcibly evicted, and they shut the camps down. So, Brexit. That's been quite a big deal for the British Roma. Not so much for the companies that are the communities that are settled here, because everywhere there's always these two kinds. In France we have the gens de voyage, and then you've got the Roma. Here it's the Romanische and the Kale. The local that have British passports, that consider themselves to be British citizens as well, and the Roma. So when Brexit happened and settled status became a thing, it got really difficult. It got difficult for both sides of the community, but particularly for the Roma that had come over in 2004. And the whole documentation, the lack of access to advice for the documentation. It's just been absolutely terrible.
There's a bottom line which we can't see. Can you read it? Sorry, somebody else is speaking.
Weakened international cooperation on climate, trade and security. This is when governments get worried and they get really nationalist. We can spot patterns. It's about all we can do. That's, I suppose, what I've been trying to do. I've been shocked by how educated people are that start these movements. I mean, a lot of university-educated academic people that just get this crazy idea that becoming right-wing and infringing upon minority rights is a good idea. It always starts local and it always starts with a few. You start to see a few Roma getting blamed for things. And then the labelling starts. ID cards, stars, triangles, as it was then. Today, I mean, I don't quite know the status of the digital identity here in Spain and in Europe. It's quite a big thing. For me, that's only a different variety of this. When people start to be catalogued, photographed, fingerprinted, as they're doing in Italy. And then, as our people did, deported. And then the worst of all, of course, is forced assimilation or extermination. And the Roma are not the only community that have suffered forced assimilation. And it wasn't just the Holocaust. The Kinder de la Straße program in Switzerland from 1926 to 1973, which is really not that long ago, was basically trying to breed out Roma children. The Aboriginal Australians, the stolen generation, breed them out, mix them with the white. The Native Americans, it's that we really don't learn. One thing that I think all have in common here is that we seem for some strange reasons will be afraid of people with dark skin. Why? UK Roma today, as we said, the Roma that arrived in 2004, pre-December 2020, have had to apply for settled, pre-settled status. There are literacy issues, there's distrust of authorities, and there's complexity around the application process that isn't made easy for them. And now, the British authorities, they don't know really how many have got secured status, how many Roma have become undocumented and documented. It's a terrible mess for the Roma community and a terrible mess for the authorities. All new EU Roma arrivals need visas, where it just used to be none. And some of them have lost their legal status, basically, because of blitz in the system, because the authorities can't really figure it out and they can't organise it properly. It's a royal mess for the UK Roma today here. I live in Spain. I can't say that Spain is a model example of anything. We have the Vox party there. They're bonkers, right-wing and bonkers. They basically want to put women back in the kitchen. They want to ban abortion. They don't want any foreigners in the country. Every country has one of these groups, and Vox is ours, but they're not really so powerful. And the man we have in charge at the moment has just decided to legalise nearly 1 million undocumented migrants. He decided it was humanitarian and economically sound, and I've got to say, we all agree with him. Because basically, we've got a labour gap, like you have here. Work permits are going to be easier to do, and I think also in Spain, the dictatorship is not so long ago, and Spaniards are terrified of the far right. Franco only died in 75. Also, we have really strong regional identities. Catalonia, the Basque Country, and so we're not quite as inclined to get national populism. And again, this is the power of the local community that I think we really all have to get behind. So let's see. The law's been passed, it's coming in. It's going to be 300,000 a year, 300,000 immigrants each year. They're basically, they make it easier for them to be in the system, have their rights. And I think it's the way to go. What can we do? What can me and you do? Get to know the community. Something like this is a great opportunity to get together, talk afterwards, network, over your tea, over your biscuit, and say, next year let's have some Roma in this chat. Next year let's have somebody in the community in this chat. And if we want someone in the community in this chat, someone from here has to go out and go and get someone from the community. Meet your neighbours. Don't be a stranger. It's as simple as that. Interfaith and inter-community work. And here I've honestly got to give a big shout out to my dad, because the work that he's doing, and my mum, and Anjono, the work they're doing together is just such a great example, and I give it in a lot of talks as well, of just stopping fear and animosity with other people. Just go and meet them. Just go and have a cup of coffee and look at the similarities within the community. Organise community events. Get resourceful, like my dad's done. If a synagogue needs security and a mosque needs security, figure it out together. Start talking about it. We've all got a few factoids now about the Roma. I'm really happy to give you my email, and there's some links at the end if you want to find out more about it from experts. Write to me if you want to know anything. Start talking about it everywhere, to your colleagues, in your schools, on social media. Keep an eye on local discrimination. Start to notice, talk to your local councillor or your local police officer. If you see that a certain number of anybody is being rounded up, support local heroes. If you do have a councillor there, I was really impressed. Talk to Charlie afterwards. He's been in Ukraine. He's also been in Belsen, and he's been in Auschwitz. I talked to him for 3 minutes. He told me 5 things I didn't know. If you have a sympathetic and brilliant counsellor, go and talk to him.
Less than brilliant.
If you have a sympathetic and average counsellor, go and talk to him.
I'm also an average local councillor.
Hey, I haven't met you yet.
Yeah. We'll meet afterwards.
That would be lovely. Thank you. The fact that you're here is massive. Thank you so much. Challenge stereotypes. We all do them and we can't help doing them, I know. Kids, it's really important. My daughter came home from school. She has 3 Roma kids in her class. I started telling me about some of the things they've been up to. It's the parents that have the responsibility to stop the stereotypes in their chats with other parents. It's that simple. It's not down to the kids. Social media, share the good stuff, call out the bad stuff. Attend Roma cultural events. Support Roma creators, basically. Go to some music. There's so much good music that they do. And keep talking about the Roma, basically. It's all we can do. Here's some books and recommendations, things for you. Lacho Drum is the classic Roma film. It's shot entirely as a musical journey with no words from Rajasthan all the way through Europe. A People Uncounted. If you would like access to the film, write to me afterwards. Sairica is a wonderful, wonderful, was a wonderful, wonderful Roma Holocaust survivor. She wrote loads of notebooks, lots of art exhibitions and art books. Her work is breathtaking. Music, as we said, the other Europeans. Ian Hancock and Lisa Messi-Smith, who I do hope you will meet, and I do hope will come and talk here, because she is a Roma activist within the community, are doing a lot, and a special thanks to them as well. The Roma and Sinti Documentation Centre in Heidelberg is the biggest Roma research centre in Europe. They give me everything I need every time I talk, and they love it when people get in touch. One Roma lesson, 2 words. Nice to key. Thank you very much. I'm going to show a short film by Issa Messi Smith about the Roma in the UK for 9 minutes, and then it's tea and bickies all round.
While Sarah's doing her technical thing, maybe we can show a bit of appreciation.
Technology gives you everything, and then it asks you for passwords.
You've got to hold your own out there. You fight for your space. You know, motorsport is dangerous. I think that people are surprised to see a woman in the sport. Especially a traveller woman, you know.
Okay, we'll line everybody up today in reverse points order. Respect one another, look after your cars, look after each other. Wish you all the very best of luck.
People think gypsy women just stay at home and cook and clean all day, but that's not what it is. When I'm in my car, I'm not just Georgie. I'm the angry bird.
That's your internet connection on the film.
It's challenging sometimes because you're up against men and they don't always like losing against women. I've had a bloke pulled up alongside of me and been like, what are you doing? He thinks that he can dominate me because I'm a woman racer. Your leg is shaking. It all boils down to them moments when you're out on track. You're either going to win or you're going to lose, but anything can happen during a race. School for me, it was difficult. I hated going. I feel like I was always the sort of different child because of the culture I was brought up in. My dad taught me how to drive, first in reverse. We built a car and a Mark 1 Fiesta. It was mint. We got to the track, I hopped in the car, my mum hit the roof. I've come from racing on the chalk, beginning, you know, with my dad sat next to me, to winning championships. I was Lakeside champion, points champion, and on the 10th of July 2016, I become English champion. Chris come with me on that meeting, and he asked my dad if he could start going out with me. 5 years down the line, we got married on the 10th of July. I think that racing sort of saved me. That's it, right? Not too hard, chap, that's it. Finished it. Out of Ronnie, Albie and Bridget, you think any of them will race?
I reckon Ronnie will race.
You reckon he will?
I reckon he'll want to race. But
You let him, it's a different story.
I don't know if I could put myself through that. The reason why I gave up the racing is because it's the kids, isn't it? Who's going to look after the kids when, you know, it's how you get hurt? And I was getting hurt all the time when I was racing.
I mean, my mum's always said, you know, you've got to do what you want and I'll support you. But at the same time, you know, you've got to provide for your family, you've got to look after your home, you know, and you've got to do what a woman's meant to do.
Yeah.
Which is right, and that's how I've been brought up. I mean, at the moment, I'm like all guns blazing. I'm like, yeah, I'm still going to race. I'm going to have a baby and I'm going to go racing.
Yeah.
But it might not work like that. I don't feel like I have to hide my identity,
but I wouldn't bring it up. Not because I'm ashamed of who I am, but because other people are ashamed of who you are. I love the pink harness. Different, isn't it? It's lovely. Being a traveller, it's a bit like racing. Everything's at risk of shutting down. Tracks being closed down. Fairs being closed. People not being allowed to travel. All the negative stuff you see in the media, sometimes you just need to get away from it and have an escape. With a big family, apart from funerals and weddings and occasionally the odd horse fair, there's not a lot of places to keep in touch and for us to go. The way that the media and stuff present travellers ain't always the best. You know, you never see a positive thing in the newspaper. I do my racing to get away from all that. All I remember is the ambulance man and the marshal. The marshal was in my face going, "Georgie, are you okay?" He was talking to me, but it was really slow. I was talking to him back, but the words wasn't coming out of my mouth. My brain wasn't getting enough oxygen. It's not until a few days after you realise when you're out that, you know, how dangerous racing is or the effects that it can have. I think, like, having a big crash, it does hit you. I think at the time you're buzzing, the adrenaline's still going, and then I feel like for me it's the next day or the next week. You know, I feel a bit crappy because you're sort of getting over your injuries, your whiplash, and, you know, is it worth it? If I was to, like, step away from the racing, what would you say?
At the end of the day, I'd support it if I don't know, say if we were settling down to like try and have a little one, or if you just genuinely didn't love it the same anymore and it was becoming more like a chore than a hobby, then I would support that. At the same time, I think you've got to make the most out of this sort of sport before it's too late. It's not going to be long before this is all a memory, I think.
Being a traveller, a lot of people have opinions on you. But I think you find who you want to be and what you want to do to put that noise to rest. I'm not a horsey gal. I want to be a stock car racer. But you fall off the horse, you've got to get back on it. My long-term goal is to become world champion. I shouldn't have to choose between being working Georgie, housewife Georgie, or race car driver Georgie. You know, my car can be as sparkly as my kitchen floor. When I'm in my car, I'm not just Georgie. I'm the angry bird.
There we go, another thing that the Roma and the Jews have in common. Powerful gobby women.